I mean, we need to work more with this data to really draw any conclusions. But yes, how come there is this big difference? Where is this coming from? How big is this? This poll says that this size has shrunk significantly. It's at the level of 35%.
35.
Yeah. So the point is, the government is very worried that the poor folks aren't out there defending it. They might not be joining the protest, but they're not out there defending it. And so currently, today in Venezuela, there is a debate. Tomorrow, there's going to be a meeting of possible meeting of a mediation, and the opposition is having this Goethean dilemma of like, do we pact with the devil or do we not? But this is the dilemma of all opposition folks in semi-authoritarian regimes. Who knows how they're going to decide? I cannot predict what is going to... I'm sure there are going to be many folks in the opposition who are going to be like, we don't pact with the devil. And certainly under the auspices of Brazil. Absolutely not. We could perhaps talk a little bit as to whether it makes sense at this point for the opposition to sit down and negotiate or not. But this is essentially my overall story for you, and I hope you guys found it worthy of discussing it, and I'm interested in hearing your comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you. You would just identify yourself? No, tú diriges. Okay.
Thank you. Hector Chamis. Javier, do you have the...
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable with the question here. Because I would like to see the mirror image of the question. If you have it, I don't know, or if you know. Mirror image would be, would you go out into the streets to protest against the government? I mean, the question is convoluted. This is one of those things that, is that Vene barometer,
it's not
from Santiago.
No. Maybe they have an affiliation, but
I don't know. This is one of those questions, right? If there was an authoritarian government that would feed your children, give you running water, a roof, would you support it? That government? Oh yes, 90% of people said yes. Then Latin America is very authoritarian. I mean, we've seen that, haven't we?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a government in decline. The poor don't have access. I'm interested in the poor. The question driving this is, well, when are the poor going to get out massively? They're deprived, right? They can't buy, toilet paper like, the middle class. They can't buy, bread like the middle class. So prices are going through the roof, right? There was a devaluation 2 weeks ago, a mega devaluation, 80, 90%, something like that. But the willingness to go out to defend a government that is in decline, that is heavily eroded, and that is not putting food on their table by any means, is completely different than the willingness to go and protest.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, well, why is Maduro lasting? Many people say. Maybe it's true, maybe not. Well, because the poor haven't gotten out yet. And everybody expected, not everybody, many people expected, well, now with the devaluation, big hike in prices next day, it's 2 weeks ago. Now the poor, the lowest quintiles are going to come out. And they haven't, at least not massively. So my question is, what's going on in those terms?
Yeah.
And this is what brings governments down, not the unwillingness of the poor to go defend the government against the well-to-do, quote unquote, but the exhaustion of patience on the part of eventually the poor.
Yeah.
And then, well, that's the question of this, but then, well, there's no competitive authoritarianism. I'm among those you mentioned that, that don't like that. If the election is not free and fair, how can it be competitive? Competitive authoritarianism makes no sense, but that's a different discussion. I couldn't help but saying that. An election cannot be competitive if it's not free. So, and authoritarian governments... What? Okay.
No.
But anyway...
Yes.
know about this.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit
critical
about, let me give you the opposition side for what's happening at the poor sectors, the low-income sectors. The government is populist, and in their populist regimes, you create these clientelistic networks, and therefore the cost of protesting is much harder given your level of dependence. So that's number one. And the private sector has shrunk, so you don't think that you have an opportunity with the private sector. Secondly, the government is a vigilante. It's a big brother state. This is what the colectivos is about. Fyodor Petkov, a famous journalist who used to be a very famous leftist, said that where you actually see the authoritarianism in Chavismo is within its ranks, not so much in the opposition, because it is incredibly devastating for you to be a constituency that defects. And so the poor essentially feels the costs of defection far more. And then finally, the opposition makes the argument of information. The poor get their sources of information from mostly state-owned media. There's no question that we've seen it, they do not get it through Twitter or Facebook. They're getting their information through the state media, and that has expanded enormously. But this all sounds like excuses. Whatever it is, the opposition should be able to have a strategy to get out of this and have more support from the poor, as reduced as the poor side is at the moment. So yes, the opposition now is very divided about this, how to reach out to the poor. Capriles says the protests are alienating them. We have to go out and do social work. And the hardliners are saying they're not alienating them, they're wishing they could be there.
But it's at the cost of affection, fear. It's a police state, and
it's a police state, but also you're not going to get the handouts. Whatever handouts you're still getting.
You're going to be single.
You could be singled out. You could be ostracized, and you could also be excluded from jobs because of the private sector in Venezuela is absolutely collapsed. There is no job growth from the private sector. So you're not going to easily sacrifice a government connection. But yes.
Thank you very much, Javier. You have offered us a great structural analysis, which I liked. And only at the end, you started to build that agency. I would like to push you a little bit further into agency. With three very short questions. The first one regards the two camps. I would like that you break them up for us, in order to understand whether the struggles between ups and downs within each camp may be more decisive for the final result of the battle than the struggle between government and opposition. The second question regards a very specific actor, or maybe more than one, the army.
Yeah.
How are they going to play if there is one army? And the third one is Cuba. That is another army, another military people having a role in the first.
Right. All right. Let's do this.
If we may.
Yeah. We are all familiar with Przeworski's famous contention that democratization is always the interplay between the softliners of the regime and the softliners in the opposition, and this is the opposition clearly has those two camps. We don't see that division in the oficialismo, in the government, until now. For the first time, there are Chavistas who feel that should we negotiate or not? Up until now was very much no, we don't pact with the oligarchas. So they're starting to see this split, and it could very well be that this could save the day, that there's going to be this alignment of softliners on both sides. Part of the problem is that they're in the middle of a war and it's very difficult to feel like there's going to be enough trust. But I think that the best strategy, rather than what Przeworski would have said, is not so much for the softliners to form an alliance with us, the softliners in the opposition form an alliance with the softliners in government, but for the opposition to use both weapons, to say, sign here, and we'll be peaceful, and if you cheat, we're going to take out the street. So I think that's the winning strategy in this game now. The opposition in Venezuela doesn't see it that way. The opposition thinks it has to choose. But I think they should say, we have the best of both worlds. We have the opportunity to negotiate, and if it fails, we can go back and cause trouble. The military. Now, this assumes that the opposition has control over the protesters, and this is very questionable
Right.
now.
The
students are not party linked, and this is a big problem. Who controls the students? It's not clear that Lopez or Capriles. So we will see. The military. The Venezuelan government is a petrostate, became a narco state under Chavez, and a little bit of a military state, and under Maduro has full-blown become military. I wish I could give you some of the evidence, but the extent to which he has brought the military into governance is remarkable, even for Chavez standards. And he did this because he felt that in negotiating with Cabello, the second strongman in Venezuela, he needed to have some pillar. And it's working out for him. He now has, look, for whatever ineptness of the Maduro government, there hasn't been a significant defection yet, openly. And this is remarkable. And the military continues to be behind him. And, in Egypt, we saw the defection of the military with Mubarak, and that was very decisive. We saw it in Libya as well. We're not seeing it in Venezuela. So until that happens, I think we're going to have Maduro for ages. So maybe that's the key actor now. And then Cuba. A lot of people say that if there's going to be a divorce, an important divorce between the military and Maduro, that it's going to be as a result of protesting Cuba. Well, it hasn't happened. And I think they tolerate the presence of Cuba because the military is experiencing so many other economic gains through corruption and narco trafficking that they can tolerate los mandones cubanos. They arrive and they act like los mandamás, and the military is like, whatever, yes, let me take care. I'll leave my profits to me. And that is why I don't think that the Cuban issue has offended the nationalist side of the military to the extent